in a tech ecosystem, we don't have a lot of women. For me to be here is proof that women can do it, women can be leaders, and I hope to inspire other women, especially young African women, to be bold and courageous, follow their passions, and when they're offered that seat at the table, to take it and take the front seat at changing the African narrative.
Since I joined Impact Africa Network, my thinking has really been expanded. I now for sure believe that if I put my mind and time into something, I can bring life-changing ideas into fruition.
The culture at IAN encourages continual learning. This makes someone to source for outlets for learning, opportunities for growth in order to continually ensure that they do the best at their job. Also working with Mark, who has this great vision for changing the African narrative. He wants to take us on that journey with him, pushes you to the limit, pushes you to want to be better.
My thinking has changed from looking for problems to being a solution provider. That way, I will stop worrying and actually do something.
I really enjoy being a leader and at the same time being a student. At Impact Africa Network, there's a lot of continuous learning and development. So it gives you this hunger for knowledge. It pushes you to be the best possible version of yourself, because you cannot change the African narrative being anything less.
At Impact Africa Network, we bet on the women. We believe women are much more effective at leading and nurturing complex people-centric systems, and startups are the quintessential people-centric systems of our day.
As the Women of Impact Africa Network, we will be hosting a live cast series with global female leaders and change makers, having conversations with the intent of inspiring a new generation of female leaders just like ourselves. If you or someone you know should be part of this conversation, we would love to host you. Talk to us.
You can also be a change maker by helping us create more leadership opportunities for women by donating today. IAN is a registered U.S. nonprofit charitable entity under Section 501c3.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, making a date with us this 5 p.m. My name is Damaris Kongin, and I'm the PR and Comms lead at Impact Africa Network. And this event today is brought to you by Power to Our Women. It's organized by the Women of Impact Africa Network. And we host conversations with global business leaders and change makers with the intent of inspiring a new generation of female leaders in Africa. Impact Africa Network is a nonprofit startup studio in Nairobi, and what we do is we bring on board talented college graduates to a 12-month innovation fellowship program that allows them to go through mentorship, leadership training, and they're able to immerse themselves in the process of building startups as a way of changing the African narrative. So thank you so much for joining us today. We have a really exciting panel lined up for today's conversation, which as you saw on our poster, is themed Catalyzing Innovation in Women Entrepreneurs. So we have an exciting poll that we want you guys to participate in. But before that, I will introduce my co-host, Victoria Chebet, who will also introduce herself before we get to our guests. Victoria.
All right. Thank you so much, Damaris, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Victoria Chebet. I am also part of Impact Africa Network. I am the lead of Part 2 Women, as well as part of the fundraising team. We're so excited to have you here, and I'll let Damaris continue with the poll as we get ready for the show. Karibu.
Okay, so I'll have our technical team indulge us in a poll today, just to get us to understand how many people have been involved in businesses, so that it can give us a background of who we have in our call, how many people have had businesses, and if they have been able to succeed. So if you can participate in the poll, that would be really great. It will also inform our guests on the number of people we have, and also the number of people who've been able to immerse themselves in trying something new and getting into entrepreneurship. I can see you guys are fast. So we already have 19 responses for yes. So clearly everyone here has been really trying to put themselves out there and put a foot into entrepreneurship, which definitely is or can be hard. But that's why we're having conversations such as these, so that we are able to empower people to keep going, because it's possible to change our world through entrepreneurship. Okay, so I think, yes, so we already have 29 out of 29. So we have 21 people who have started businesses and 8 who have not, but I'm glad you're in this session today because you're going to learn quite a bit. Okay, so I think Victoria, you can proceed to introduce the panel that we prepared today. We have exciting women here who've done amazing things in the entrepreneurial world for themselves as well, and have really made such strides to help other women to also get ahead in their entrepreneurial journeys. So Victoria, I'll hand it over to you to introduce our guests.
Thank you so much, Damaris. I mean, I couldn't have said it better. So I will just start off with mentioning a little bit about their bio because I can't finish, to be honest. It's very extensive. All of them have done amazing, amazing stuff. So I'm just going to say briefly something small, and then they will come in to mention a little bit more about themselves. And yeah, we can proceed from there. So I'm going to start with Anne. Anne, thank you so much for joining us today. So Anne is the founder of Sokoletu Limited. She also sits in the Transcentury Limited and Biashara Factors, and she is the special advisor to President Uhuru Kenyatta's on matters concerning SMEs, and she has also worked as the chairperson of Standard Chartered Bank Kenya Limited. So I'm Karibu Sana. Please say hi to the guests, and you can also mention a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone on this call, and thank you very much, Victoria and Damaris, for your very warm welcome. It's a great pleasure to be among so many entrepreneurs. I would like to just say that I'm also looking forward just to learning from your responses, even as we share. The entrepreneurial journey is not one you do alone, but it's one that you do with a lot of support. So I'm so happy to see the work that you're doing at Impact Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne. And thank you for mentioning that entrepreneurship is not a one-person thing. So the next person I will be introducing is Patricia. I remember when I was reaching out to her, I was very excited because their platform does a lot. Yes, and they are very inspiring with their stories. They're really great at storytelling, especially women's stories. And I must say that's how I came across Anne's story. So thank you, Patricia, for what you're doing. So Patricia is also a very successful entrepreneur. She's been doing this for 19 years, and she has been successful at running 2 small businesses. One is Willart Production, and the second one is Conferencing in a Box. She has also been a co-author for a book, A Candid Handbook for Women Doing Business. She also co-founded Kayana Create, which is a premium space for female entrepreneurs. So I'm just going to let her introduce herself as well and say a little more about Kayana and everything else she does.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me as well. I'm excited to be here with Anne, who's one of my mentors and a really good friend of mine, and a real support system for female entrepreneurs. And we really appreciate, Anne, the work that you have done with the Office of the President. I'm excited to be here, Victoria. It's been a back and forth, but it's exciting now to be speaking about our own journeys in a very candid way, in a way that we hope that will inspire other people to go into this journey of entrepreneurship. Of course, to learn a lot. I believe that young people are really the change that this country needs, and we're eager and hungry to learn from you in terms of a different way of doing things. I love that you said that it is possible to change the world through entrepreneurship. That is something that I deeply, deeply believe, and that is the reason why we do the work we do at Kayana, because we know we can make the changes that the country needs through entrepreneurship. Excited to be here, and very, very privileged with my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And I must say you both look very lovely. So our third guest today is going to be Navalayo Sembo. And I know some of you might know her. She's not a guest who's here for the first time at Impact Africa Network. She's also been here through Chini ya Maji podcast. And she is the co-founder and CEO of Enda Sportswear, which is the first African and Kenyan sports brand. So that's something I'm sure like something so phenomenal. And I must say, when she was entering her entrepreneurial journey, she left her very comfortable job at UN in New York. So she mentions this story, and I remember when I was reading through her and trying to get her to be our guest, I was so fascinated by that point, because I mean, of course, some of us, that's usually like a dream job. It's like, I'm in the UN. But yeah, so she's also been through this entrepreneurial journey. But aside from that, she's a social entrepreneur. She's a humanitarian worker, and she also very firmly believes in community. Part of what they get from ENDA, they take it to the community. So I'm really excited to have her here. Welcome, Nabalayo. Is she here? Okay, so
unfortunately not yet.
All right, no problem. As we wait for Navalayo and as our technical team finds out if there's anything wrong, we will just proceed on to the questions. We're so excited. Thank you for participating in the polls. I will let Damaris continue.
Thank you so much, Victoria. As you have heard from her, we have a really interesting panel here today. And I think I'll just start from the beginning, because for you to be here, it clearly shows that you have actually played an important part in empowering women through the entrepreneurial journeys. So I think my first question would be, did this really stem from a gap that you experienced, while you went through your own journey? So I think I'll start with Anne. I know you have worked with SMEs, and I'm sure part of this has involved women. So did you identify this as a gap? Is this something you are trying to get into and realized, okay, there's really some difficulties in maybe accessing finance, accessing locations to start your business and things like that? Maybe walk us through how you decided to support SMEs. You're on mute, Anne, sorry.
Thank you very much, Damaris, for your question. I think my journey in SMEs really began from an appreciation of what our country could be and how poor we were. And I really began as an anti-poverty crusader. When I entered into the space of SMEs, because I clearly saw that given the demographics in our country, given the shape of our economy, that entrepreneurship was actually the key to unlocking our economy, I realized that it was also a space where women tended to dominate. And that is because of the many responsibilities that women have as homemakers, as community makers, that entrepreneurship was an area that they were able to thrive in. However, what I did also recognize is that given the society that we live in, which is largely patriarchal, we found that women, even though they may have been very skilled, very good business people, were in a community that maybe was not as supportive as they could be. And for that, I really applaud my sister Pat, because she's realized that telling stories and encouraging one another is a critical component of ensuring that women form good support groups and are able to mobilize each other and know the support that they've required. So it was something that I had seen, through my work. I've also been an entrepreneur in my own space, and I've also noticed the same kind of thing, that women were often the first ones to get discouraged when businesses did not go well. They're the first ones to sometimes say, let me try something else. And I really feel that that gap has been slowly but surely, I think, identified and is slowly narrowing due to the great support of a lot of different initiatives. Having said that, I also want to just put on the table that supporting entrepreneurship is not something that is a one-all-fix-all. It requires ensuring that you have a very holistic attitude and approach, and that you appreciate that there's actually a lot of very different components that need to be in place. And I feel that the time really is now, the awareness is there. And I really believe that in the next couple of years, we'll see a great transformation in this space, not only for women, but indeed for our entrepreneurial world.
Thank you for that, Anne. I think entrepreneurs are basically problem solvers, and I see you doing that in this whole journey, which probably started in way back to 2008. So I'll get to how it was then and the strides we've made, and just to see the things that have been able to be done within that period, because you've gone through that process, you've seen the steps we've been taking to a point where even now young people are now the ones being more vocal about entrepreneurship. For Pat, I think you are nurturing a beautiful community of women, and it's supporting them through their journeys. So maybe also talk to us about how you got into that.
Thank you so much, Damaris. I just want to reiterate indeed what Anne has said. As an entrepreneur, my experience was really around the space that I found it very lonely. I went into business quite young when just after college, and I just graduated from university, was just getting married and starting a young family. And one of the reasons that I did go into business was not really that, it was not something that I had planned to do. It was really out of circumstances. At the time, my husband was based in Mombasa. I was working for a media house in Nairobi and working extremely long hours. So jumped into this business journey. But what happened then is that my friends who I had graduated in were going into employment. So they were immediately going into, working in the corporate space, etc. And I didn't really have anybody to measure or to speak to about, my entrepreneurial journey. So before I got into Kayana, it was really, really lonely. My friends actually were my staff, because we were just going along and feeling along as we went through making mistakes and learning, etc. And later, around I would say maybe 15, 16 years into my entrepreneurial journey, I took a break from business when I had my last born son. And that really was the thing that really made me think through how I wanted to go back in. How would I want to encourage other people? Many of my friends who had now been in employment were looking at starting either a side hustle or a business for whatever reason. And I was finding that I was now a resource person for them. So it was interesting that from now being a very lonely journey to now having a space where, I was almost giving advice, to people on how what to do. And that's really what guided me in terms of pivoting into the work that I'm doing with Kayana, of course, writing a candid handbook for women doing business. It came from a place of extreme loneliness. The second thing is I've been really, really fortunate. Honestly, I've had fantastic mentors. I've been very, very lucky to have met people like Anne, who have been very gracious and, given me a lot of time, been very patient with me, very candid on, in terms of the journey. And I'll just give you a quick example, because I like to share real examples. We were once in a meeting with Anne. I think that's when I first met her. And this might not sound like anything, but I had just really literally gone back into employment. Into work, into business after having my last one. And I shared the story in a taxi ride with Anne, and she really, really encouraged me, telling me about her own journey and raising her own children. And, many times we don't get that kind of candor in conversations. We see these, amazing women doing amazing things, but just being able to have that conversation where we're just being real women and talking about our journey can be somewhat elusive. And I really, in the work that we do in Kayana, we try to recreate those experiences, just letting people come as themselves and sharing real stories, the heartbreak, the joys, the wins, etc., in its real and unsanitized form. And that's what makes the work that we're doing exciting.
That's really, really beautiful. I think I resonate with when you talk about when women share their journeys. And I think that's what stemmed this whole platform, because people see these global women doing amazing things, going to speak in different countries in big panels. And it's like, wow, okay, they're trying to wonder, how will I ever get there? But hearing these stories of how they went through also the unglamorous side of their journeys and getting to where they were, and people that help them. When you talk about mentors, I think that's really, really huge. They really help you to get unstuck and to, it cuts the problem by half. And you're able to get through that much more seamlessly. So thank you so much for that. I think it really inspires, and it really encourages people to also be problem solvers in their own regard. When you see something that you've not been able to solve, and you're looking around and there's no one who's solving it, then that would be an opportunity to get into entrepreneurship or to become a problem solver in any way. Victoria, I think I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, I feel like we just started this on a very high note. I mean, like when Anne was saying, telling stories and encouraging one another. I mean, that's the essence of life. You can't just go through life by yourself, even if you're not an entrepreneur.
I think we have lost Victoria, but that is okay. So I think I'll go deeper into some questions so we can give much more insight to our audience. I'm sure as you have progressed through your entrepreneurial journeys, the skills you have had to pick. It was not, you were not self-made and decided, okay, now I'm a founder, so everything is going smoothly. You've had to grow along the way. There's skills you've had to pick up, some even accounting, things you never imagined. You have to look at the finances, you have to look at hiring, you have to look at what the kind of team you have, how do you keep them growing? So I feel like I want you to also speak to that. As you get into entrepreneurship, you have to keep yourself open to learning. So Anne, maybe you can start us off on that.
Yeah, I remember when I entered entrepreneurship, although I used to do side hustles here and there, I came from a corporate background. So I came from employment into my own business. And one of the things that you quickly realize is that the corporate employment is very sanitized for you. And, for instance, HR is there to identify the people you should work with and a lot of the other support that you have. But once you enter your own business, it's actually up to yourself. And what I found, I think, most challenging for me was trying to get the right people to come on board, given the money I had, which wasn't much. So, that was a very, very big challenge. Then also trying to motivate them enough. You found that I think that was very, very challenging, because what that means is that you always have to have a very clear vision in even your conversation. So for instance, I remember the first businesses I have were shops where actually I was, selling women and youth clothes and all that. And sometimes you won't have a sale for a week. I found that you couldn't begin commiserating with the people you've employed there, because you're the one who's supposed to be setting the tone, for it's gonna come, and you have to be out there looking as if you're looking at different options. So I think that for me was very, very challenging. And even when I then went and transitioned into my microfinance business, I also found that ensuring that you identify the right skills for the right job, because you can't do it alone. I think to me that was the biggest challenge that I had.
I think that's really, really interesting when your team is looking up to you, but you're also going through it. You're also going through it. Victoria, I think you're back. It's okay. We can just proceed with the conversation. Pat, you can also share a bit of what that has been for you as well as a founder.
Yeah, I really resonate with Anne. I think when you are a founder and when you start a business, there's an assumption that you're suddenly given this magical power to understand everything about, handling things and the way things should go. And a lot of times it's just baptism by fire, and it's really, really tough. And yeah, I think by being a founder, as I say, you find yourself in a leadership position. So one of the first skills that I quickly learned was the leadership skill. I'm not a firstborn, I'm a middle child. So I'm used to firstborn taking the fire, you know how middle children are. So being in a position where you have to take a decision, you have to be the one to guide, you have to be the eyes going forward, even if you're really scared of, going into a big pitch or going to speak to, these mighty corporates and convince them to give you work when you don't really know how you're going to deliver. Your team is watching you. So you have to somehow find the courage, to go forward and do it. Another thing in terms of leadership, which we often don't talk about, is that at the end of the day, the buck stops with the leader. Yes, somebody in your team may have gone wrong, done something extremely wrong, etc. But there's an assumption that it is at the end of the day they represent you. So just being able to not only take the glory and the shine, the things that are great in terms of the things that we naturally want to steer towards, but also to be able to be the person who's on the firing line on behalf of your team has been one of the hardest skills for me to learn, and I still go through that even today. The second thing I have to speak about is I don't come from a natural financial background. I'm actually an artist. My first degree is in graphic design. That's my major, was in graphic design. And so I went into the path of least resistance in terms of my business. I went into my skill sets and where I felt that I was, that would be easy, let me put it like that, that I had a natural talent for. And one of the hardest thing to learn was to understand money in business. I think things like understanding when you're making money, you know, there's an assumption that money is coming in and therefore you're running a profit, and learning quickly the difference between margins and profitability, understanding that we need to pay our taxes and how you factor those into those costs. And some of these things are really hard lessons that you learn, because there was, especially like 20, my business is now 22 years, there was no real like internet which was giving us, you know, this information. Huduma centers didn't exist. The revenue authorities didn't have websites where we could go for information. So we're really just feeling our way through, and of course made many, many mistakes in the process out of ignorance. And you know, the law says ignorance is not an excuse. So that has been difficult. Another skill that I think that I've learned, which may not be tangible, it's intangible, is really known as having a tough skin, because things can be thrown at you in business. Whoa, they can be thrown at you. And just being able to dust yourself, stand up and move forward. And many times, you know, the drama, like you could find us on a call here, me and Anna really laughing. There's a fire somewhere being fought by somebody, but you just have to come and be present. And it was very, very difficult for me to separate those two things, in terms of not being to be able to say, okay, the crisis, the fire is there. Now I have to, you know, move on here. I need to do my presentation. I need to ensure that the team is delivering. So at the beginning of my business, there was no team. So it was me. I would go and do the designs. The designs are shot down by the client. I drive out of there. I'm crying. I'm wiping my eyes. I get to the office. I have to rework those designs and make sure that they're sent the next day. So that's just, I think, tenacity and grit that was being developed, that at that time, I didn't know why I was going through. You know, you ask God, why am I going through this? But you don't realize later that you have to go through all that for you to be able to be the kind of leader, you know, to lead your business forward. So really, really, I think great, tough skin, understanding money. If you're running a business, you must understand money. No excuse about that. Understand how money works, understand, have a very good relationship with money, you know, deal with whatever demons you have around cash and that. And the last thing I want to bring that I think has really been something that I still continue to learn today is to have a very deep self-belief. There's a lot of doubts, and those don't disappear overnight. Some of them are from our upbringing. Some of them, when you think you've just sorted it out, something comes and crushes your self-esteem. And just having a very deep self-belief in the work that you do and that you're doing the right thing, even when doubt comes, I think is really, really an important skill for an entrepreneur to have, and a leader as well to have. Yeah.
Wow. I must say your stories, they're so inspiring. And Patricia and Anne, you must know that most of the people who we work with at Impact Africa Network are actually entrepreneurs by themselves. And some of the things that you're saying, I'm sure they can resonate. I'm seeing some of them laughing with their videos on, but yeah, they can truly resonate with your stories and some of the skills that you've had to pick up. I know, for example, about money, we've really had to start thinking seriously about that with one of the projects that I'm working with. So thank you so much for mentioning such, and those are such amazing skills that you've gotten to learn. Damaris, do you have something to say?
No, actually, I'm just on the same page on that. Startups, entrepreneurship. It's like you have to be, you know, the fundraiser. You're the leader. You're the marketer. It's like exactly. So it's really insane the number of skills you have to pick up. But the financial understanding of money, I think that one is really huge. Maybe previously you would be used to just, you know, getting in your money, you know, your salary is coming, you're not thinking about what the tax is higher this month, you know, things like that. But when you become an entrepreneur now, it becomes, you know, it's now much, much closer to you. So understanding it really helps you to sit at the table and make decisions with your financial advisor. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So the next question will be going to Anne. Anne, you mentioned somewhere in your bio that by 2008, you were convinced that the undeserved small and medium segment of the economy was the area that you wanted to serve in specifically, and you wanted to particularly make sure there's provision of modernized physical market work sites, and you believe that this would be a trigger factor in addressing the myriad of challenging factors in this in this area. So I just wanted to ask you, from when you started in 2008 to now, 2022, is there a change? Is there something you wanted to see when you were starting and now? Yes, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, 2008 was a long time ago, and a lot has happened since that time. During that time, I was, of course, talking from being in a private sector position. But then, I got the opportunity to actually serve, in government and to see the whole sector from a very different dynamic. I think what has happened during that time is that there's been an appreciation that the SME sector is so much more complex than we give it credit for. We tend to say it in one word, but actually it has so many different levels, so many different age groups. And of course, there's been a lot of change in a lot of things since 2008. Even as we talk about the importance of workspaces, then right now, a lot of young people who are the majority in SMEs, are able to work digitally. They're able to work from very flexible, spaces. So I find that for me, if you're to ask me, what have I learned about the SME sector now is that, as I said previously, that to try and approach it from a single point of view, I find that it's somehow simplistic, because even as, we've managed to work around workspaces, which are important, especially for startups, you find that they need so many other things. So the fact that you provided someone with a workspace, but maybe not provided them with the right financing, the right marketing, the right capacity support in terms of maybe some of their products, you can actually end up also reaching a dead end. So it's important that we try to look at all those things. What I am proud of right now is that there has been a very, I think, intentional awareness that SME is actually the engine for the economy, that it's not a labor problem. Before, when they used to talk about Juakali or SMEs, they used to think that it's just that you didn't get employed. So somehow this is where you've ended up. No, now they've seen that it's a real career choice, and also that they're actually economic actors. Now, when you position them as economic actors, that means that there's a lot of support that must actually go to this sector to help them to grow. So I think that thinking has slowly now sort of pervaded both government and private sector. And I'm very certain that, given the new administrations that are coming in and, going forward, the partnerships that you're now seeing, the closer collaborations between the private sector, between people like Kayana, who are, themselves representing a segment of that huge SME sector, and many others, that the fact that they're willing to work together, they're able to meet and collaborate, means that we'll actually begin to move forward, and have done so. Just to mention that, when you look at, from the government point of view, even getting them to do a credit guarantee scheme, so that they can actually empower a lot of SMEs, and realizing that SMEs do have challenges, in terms of collateral, in terms of getting the right amount of funding. So you can see that there's a shift in the mindset, which I think is critical and very, very important.
I mean, yes, and I agree with one thing you've mentioned, that the mindset for sure. When most of us, when we were growing up, it's like, oh, you left your job to become an entrepreneur.
It's
oh,
true.
wow. Yeah,
tell us the truth, where you really checked out. That was that kind of thinking that was there.
Exactly. So, when you're talking about it like that, I'm just thinking through, when I was growing up, I must say, I remember, I'll just give a quick story. We started selling fruits. They're called mapera. I don't know if you guys know them, but yes, guavas. So, and then my parents found us on the side of the road selling them, and they were like, what? School, book, umefanya homework, such things. So I think, there was such the mind is very powerful for sure. Thank you so much, Anne, for that question. We'll move on to the next one.
Okay, awesome. I think that's a really, I think there's amazing progress right now, especially also, as she said, the collaboration between the private sector and the government as well, and platforms coming up to actually empower people and create that awareness that there exists support structures for them to keep going. So I think there's no better time to thrive than now. So I'll go to Pat, and I think Pat has spoken about her need to because her journey coming up with Kayana came from that loneliness, and she decided to come up with this platform where women can actually be each other's support structures. So I'm sure there's interactions you've had, there's challenges women have surfaced in these interactions that you've had. Maybe you can share some of the challenges and the impact that Kayana has had by. And with this, I want to really highlight the importance of having a community when you're in entrepreneurship. So Pat, you can share with us what Kayana has been able to achieve through those conversations.
So thanks. I'm thinking maybe I need to give a bit of background on how in 2019 we opened our doors to Kayana. We alluded to the fact that we published a book, A Candid Handbook for Women Doing Business in Kenya in 2016, which was written by myself and JC Nyala. And the book was, you know, when I initially had the idea for the book, it was really from a trip that I had come from, and I had met amazing women, and I wanted to recreate that whole same experience here in Kenya. But when I started to talk to people about their experience that I had meeting these really successful billionaires, actually, there were many billionaires in the room and dollar millionaires, I was actually discouraged. I was just told, oh man, there's so many networking events happening. But I was never being invited to these events. They may be happening, but they were not landing. No invitation was landing in my inbox. So being the entrepreneur that we are, and we know that we create things and we meet needs, the idea of hosting an event around the book kind of like was shelved. And instead what we did is now write the book. Now, in writing the book, I interviewed over 22 female entrepreneurs. And it's nice when you say you're writing a book, because those women who have not been accessible before suddenly are accessible, which was awesome. So I wrote the book. It came out, I think, in 2017, if I'm not wrong. And I wasn't intending to launch it because I didn't like speaking in front of people. I'm very introverted. That was not going to be part of the plan. But because I had interviewed very successful women, of course, they were waiting for a launch. So they pushed me, and we ended up hosting our first event, which was really successful. We had over 50 women in the room. And immediately the next month, they said, we need to repeat this. We need to repeat this. So we ended up having almost four events just back to back. And then obviously the answer was then, if there is indeed an opportunity for women to network, where is it? If all these women, hundreds of them, are coming for this event. So that was squashed in terms of that. But it was, at the end of the day, it was a fantastic, there are fantastic events. It's called Candid Conversations Circles for Women in Business, which we still host today. It was fantastic. Women would come, they were excited, they would meet. We would meet for like 4 hours, talk about various things and leave. But I was not really still answering the question is, where are these entrepreneurs who, when we want to talk and when to support each other, where are they? And so Kayana is designed specifically for entrepreneurs. We'll still have the networking events, which is great because that's part of building community and trust. But ultimately, we need to be able to work on our business and to track the growth of the businesses and the impact that this community, these interventions, this capacity building really has on our businesses. And that is what it is about Kayana. Slow growth in terms of numbers, but really intentionality when it comes to supporting and building businesses, something that I felt had been missing before. I never imagined, and honestly, maybe it's my creative side, I didn't imagine that I would then, Patricia, you'll be a spokesperson for female entrepreneurs. That was not the reason. We were just meeting a need. My hunger for networking and for meeting fellow entrepreneurs is also being satisfied in this process of building businesses. So to answer the question around what ails, what are the problems that female entrepreneurs face? Of course, and this is by no means reducing what it is. Access to finance is a big thing. It seems like it's being regurgitated. And many, maybe men who listen to this don't really realize what it means to not to access money as an entrepreneur, because it's not something that they innately will experience. So what it is, first of all, if we go culturally, women generally didn't inherit immovable assets such as land or buildings. And many times this is what the banks require for you to give them as collateral for your business. Now, to grow your business, there are two things that are running back to back. There's one, access to markets. So you're there running your small business, you get a large order, and suddenly you can't finance it. Therefore, you are forced to go and look for alternative financing, right? Now, when you go to look for the alternative financing, you're being asked for collateral, which you actually do not have. Yeah, it doesn't matter how much you smile or whatever. At the end of the day, you're either going to look for your father, your brother, or somebody to give you a title deed. It is a reality. It is a reality, something even I myself have faced personally in running my businesses. So I'm speaking from my own experience. It is a real challenge. And many times when women don't have a co-director who is male, they will face immeasurable challenges in being able to access finance. So access to finance is a problem. Of course, there are very many interventions that are coming up. There's funding coming into the market, but we're still traditionally, because the banks are traditionally the people who are lending finances, and behind banks are people. And those people traditionally do not view entrepreneurs as people who are running serious businesses. And as a result, we are treated as such. The second thing is access to markets. So you now have your product, right? It's great. How do I get my product out there to other markets? You have to get these products certified, and that becomes another hurdle. Certification of products of different ranges. Women are generally around food, beauty, health, etc. All those things need KEB stickers, need to pay excise duties, etc. All those things become hurdles towards the entrepreneurial journey. Remember, women are nurturers. They're looking after their elderly, or they're looking after their children and running their homes. A hurdle that takes them away from that prevents them from investing in their businesses. It is real and it is true. I always introduce myself as a small business owner. I kept my businesses deliberately small because I was raising a family. So this is the truth. Yeah, it's not a fantasy when we talk about it. And so these are real challenges. And I feel so bad every time people try to take away from, why are we pushing this thing of women being able to access money? Why is it a big deal? The numbers show 93% of the labor force is micro and small businesses. Of the micro and small businesses, and let's talk micro, 84% of them are run by women. It is a problem. If we can't move micro businesses into the next phase, which is small and eventually medium, we're not going to see growth in this economy. The GDP of this country is run by, and will tell you, small business. There's no way government would invest in something that is not true. They have the data and they've seen the numbers. We are not talking about taking anything away from men. We're talking about enabling women to be able to grow their businesses into something that can be left for generations to come. The numbers tell the truth. It doesn't matter how loud it sounds, at the end of the day, the numbers are the ones that tell the truth. And the truth is there are not enough women-run businesses that are there for the next generation. So we really have to face those challenges. I'm sure Anne can speak a lot around this because she knows the data and she's seen it. Yeah.
I think you really speak of some really huge challenges. And when you say when banks look at businesses, of course, it's a really high risk environment. It could either be successful or not. So it's like, okay, so who gives you this loan that we are not guaranteed back? So I think Victoria will take it up because I know she has a follow-up question for Anne, and it's literally in the same regard. So I think this is actually just moving in the right direction. Vicky, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia, for mentioning the access to money, because the next thing I was going to ask Anne is, where can growth-oriented women entrepreneurs get the necessary financial support, especially in Kenya? And I know since you're working very closely in this sector, you might be able to have some pointers. And this is a very key thing in this discussion because we're going to be noting it down and posting it also on our social media. Yes.
Thank you very much, Victoria. And I want to begin by fully supporting my sister, Pat. I think she articulated so well, the true challenges that women go through. And I think what she brought out is that women financing has to be fit for women. It has to recognize who they are. As I said at the beginning, we live in a patriarchal society. So a lot of the stuff that we have is actually geared towards the male kind of thinking. And I think that's a very critical point. So I don't want to repeat what my sister has said, because I think she did it beautifully. But I will say that I do think that there's still an opportunity in this country for us to all sit down together and come up with what I would say is women-specific financing, women-specific entities, recognizing the many roles that they play at different points in time. I remember when I was chair of Women Enterprise Fund, we used to have a challenge. And the challenge was that it was difficult to get women to borrow more than, say, 100,000. You know, it was rare for women to borrow 2 million. And I think Pat said it brilliantly, is that it's not that women are not ambitious, is that they are able to look at all the different roles that they play. And the question they ask themselves is, can I really open 3-4 shops in different towns when I'm still got school going children? You know, who's going to look after this particular community, my home, etc. And that is something that needs to be understood by institutions and also understood by banks. What I find women actually need is small bits of money as they're moving along, you know, because then that helps them to, you know, grow incrementally. And also the fact that, of course, women network quite well, and to give them those opportunities to do so. So they are trying, I think that there is an effort to try and recognize it, but I don't think we're there yet. And I think that's a space that probably we again should come in under an umbrella of collaboration and actually sit down and be specific. You see, sometimes what I find is that women are also shy. You know, you call them into a room with male dominated and they're asked what kind of finances that they want. You know, they won't sometimes come out with that. And I feel that institutions like yourselves and Kayana and others need to have that real conversation, need to come up with a proper design and say that for this level of a woman entrepreneur, this is the kind of financing that they require when they're doing X. They need maybe some supply financing, etc. Then I think you will see a huge change in the way that women businesses actually thrive and grow. I also want to say that, as I had discussed with you, Victoria, I'm running end to end, and I've got another. I've been waiting for on another side in the function that I was in. So I would like to ask your permission that within a few minutes, that if you see that I've signed off, that you'll understand, and just to thank you so much for your very kind invitation, and you know, just for all the participants that come here. I will look forward to looking at the recorded video just to see the feedback that is there. But I want to thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you for answering that question. That was actually your last question, so you are allowed to leave. I understand that you had another event. No problem. So I will just let Damaris continue, but before she does that, I'd like to ask the audience, if you have any questions, please let us know. Even though we might not have time because we have 8 minutes to the end of this show, we will definitely be posting it for our guests for them to answer. So please feel free to ask any question that you might have. Damaris.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. It was really exciting to have Anne. I think I'll proceed to the last question because of time. I think, so Patricia, of course, you have talked about financing. You have talked about mentorship, but there's also, if you're in entrepreneurship, there's evolving, there's, you have to keep innovating. So how do you, in your circle of women at Kayana, how do you encourage them to keep innovating and to keep, ideating even within the idea that they have already established? Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for that question. I remember when you sent it earlier, I really gave it some thought. But I'll just say this. We're just coming off the celebration on Monday of the 27th of June, which is the World MSME Day. And what we at Kayana did, we said, you know what, we never see micro businesses being celebrated. Why don't we have an award for micro businesses? And I'll tell you why we thought of this. Many times we're celebrating, the thing that we're celebrating is the idea, the fact that you were brave enough to bring that idea into market, and I feel that for me, that was what was really exciting about seeing the businesses that were eventually nominated, and even those that won. Some of them were just 2 or 3 years old, but the scope and the work in which they have done. I mean, we had an organization that has managed to reach 300 and something women in terms of just offering mentorship support, especially for women who hadn't finished at secondary school level. And it's a soft skill that they're showing because they know that there's an opportunity there and they're investing in that. And I thought that was great. We had another business that's doing a feeding program, which is just embedded in the core of what they do as a business. So seeing a lot of entrepreneurs who were putting in impact as part of a core part of their business, which when we started our businesses, impact was not, we were not social entrepreneurs, we were just in it for the money. So seeing businesses at such a young age, incorporating entrepreneurship into the business, I think is really quite fascinating. And this award, which we hope to host every single year, we hope to get more support, from other people outside who are interested in this sector. I think many people don't like this 1 to 6 year because there's a lot of death of businesses in that age group. But I think just being able to highlight and see the exciting ideas coming through should encourage other people to do the same. There's usually something like known as a curse of awards. I think even in the Oscars, we see it. Somebody wins an award once and then that's it, death of career. So we're hoping this is not going to be reflected in businesses. The key purpose is really around highlighting and seeing the businesses and the work that they do. Of course, because my background is in media, many things that we then do is highlight stories, untold stories. I'm really, really passionate about untold stories and people doing amazing things because I feel the media tends to highlight the same businesses over and over again. I mean, the mainstream media. So for us, we're committed to telling those untold stories, around and specifically around entrepreneurship. And we work in both ways in which we highlight businesses that have been there. Some of them have been there for a long time. They just are maybe media shy and don't want to speak about it. But the second part of it is highlighting organizations that are really committed to supporting small and micro businesses. And I think these also have to be celebrated because many times in the corporate sector, in large organizations, to go against the grain. You've heard what Anne has said, talking about a different form of funding for women. To stick your neck out and say, look, this is my project and I'm going to die with it, takes a lot of courage for individuals within institutions to actually do this on behalf of small and micro businesses. So we felt we needed to celebrate these women. And so we also highlight those stories on our YouTube channels and in our magazines that have been very, very well received across the board. And it was really nice to hear, Victoria, that's how you also met Anne and the amazing work that she's doing. So it's really, that's how we try to use innovation. That's how we try to use technology in sharing these stories and in telling entrepreneurial stories to a much wider audience than we would have ordinarily reached.
Wow, Pat, I think that's really, really beautiful. I saw the awards on your LinkedIn post and they really, really look gorgeous. They look like an African goddess, like whoever designed that was really dope. I think we discussed it for a whole, it was really, really nice. I think when people see businesses failing, it could be, no one cares to think the process they went through to get there, the things they tried that didn't work, the funding they tried to get, the mentors, people to actually take a look at their product. So I think highlighting that actually gives them opportunities for more people to actually see. Even if it didn't succeed, they'll be like, okay, so now I'm paying attention. That idea is really cool. How are they executing it? Also, it's funding they didn't have. Maybe I think I can consider giving a look, giving a look to that business. So I think that's a really, really good way of keeping people innovating and encouraging people to get going and highlighting untold stories. I think you're right when you say mainstream media, of course, highlights the same brands, which is not a bad thing, but it still disadvantages people who are coming up with new solutions that are also as valid. So I think that's really, really cool what you're doing at Kayana. Victoria, if you have anything to add before we wind up.
Actually, I mean, I know that, Patricia, you're doing such amazing work with women, and it's just, we would like to just salute you and to tell you to keep going, because you are not only encouraging them, you're also changing them, and not just them, you're also changing us. And it's good to hear the candid conversations that you have. And one of them that you've mentioned today is the burdens that women have. It's not just their business, but also their community, their home community is also part of the things that they think about. So having a community such as Kayana and candid conversations, for women that you run is also really important to know. And I must say that think Modesta will be posting it on the chat for those who'd like to see. Go and have a look at Kayana and what they do, as well as circles of businesses. Yes. Yeah.
And let me just say this. I know we just have 1 more minute. There's nothing special about Patricia. Don't be cheated. There's nothing special about Patricia. Each and every person here can make a change and can make a difference. That's just what it is. Yeah. And I think that needs to be reiterated, because sometimes we hear these things and they seem insurmountable. That's not the case. There was nothing special about Patricia. What I did, and I told you I was very lazy, I took the easiest route out through going into graphic design and eventually doing what I'm doing. But the difference, I think, is just thinking of how many more people you can impact as you go along the way. And I think it's extremely important that that is reiterated here. And I love that young people are really, really socially conscious. And I think it's a great thing. Yes, maybe we can't all be politicians. Yes, maybe we can't all, or even don't want to be. But if you're in your own sphere of influence, even if you're employing 3-4 people and instilling in them a value system that they can then see that, yes, there are people who are doing ethical business and business can be done right. And we don't have to be making billions of shillings, but we can still impact community. I think for me, that is really the message I would like to cut across, today before we get off, because there's nothing special here. And that's why it's important for us to tell even those small untold stories, because there's a lot of impact in the work people are doing and not shouting about it. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And thank you for ending on that. I think it's a good place to end the show at. Damaris, before you go and end the show, I guess I will just invite the audience. You can follow us, PTOW Women, on our socials, on social media, on Instagram. It's PTOW Women with underscores on each word. And then LinkedIn, PTOW Women, and Twitter, PTOW Women. So we look forward to seeing you, commenting and posting about this show. Thank you so much for joining us today.